So we have some controversy. Big fight in Las Vegas. MGM Grand for the 155-pound title of the world. Saul Alvarez, a split decision in 12 rounds over Erislandy Lara. Your scores: Dave Moretti, 115, 113 for Alvarez. Jerry Roth for Lara with the same score. And the most controversial scorecard of the night, Levi Martinez, 117, 111 for Canelo Alvarez. Ray, you've been in that ring. You have the trained eye. Who won this fight?
First of all, I'm going to just say the fight was the cure for insomnia. It was such a stinking fight, I'll tell you the truth. I tell you what, I'm just glad I had to hit about 3 espressos to stay up for it. In my viewpoint, Lara won the fight, and I'll tell you why. You know, this was a typical fight, Steve, where one guy did nothing and the other guy did less, because Lara didn't do a whole lot, but Canelo did less. Now, people say, well, he chased him. He was the one coming forward. I tell people, there's a thing called, you judge for aggression, but effective aggression. Now, if a guy's coming forward and he's getting smacked around, that's not effective aggression. Then there's also, you judge on another point, ring generalship. Who's dictating the fight? Now, Canelo was coming forward, but every time Lara, when he did throw punches straight down the middle, he caught him every time. Canelo doesn't know how to get out of the way of a punch. And then what he was doing, he was, as Angelo Dundee used to say, ring around the rosy. He was following him, which means Lara's dictating the pace in the direction of the fight. If you learn how to cut him off, you know, then you'd say, well, Canelo's dictating. He's got ring generalship. But he didn't. Now, granted, Lara is an experienced amateur. You know, we had a large, extensive amateur career, and he still fights like an amateur in many ways. He hasn't learned that the American public, you know, you have to sell the fight. You have to fight a little bit for the American public to buy you. But as far as that fight, he won the fight, in my view.
Ray, I got to completely disagree. And it reminds me of what Mills Lane told you after your controversial loss to Hector Camacho. Without you, Ray, there is no fight. As far as I'm concerned, without Saul Alvarez, what we have is a game of tag where nobody is it. Now, Ray, this is professional boxing. You talk about ring generalship, you talk about boxing. To me, Lara fought like a guy fighting or boxing for a gold medal or a trophy. This is professional prize fighting. If you look at what Lara did, you say he did not get the ring cut off on him by Saul Alvarez. I don't disagree, but Ray, I'll make the argument. If a guy runs around the ring like Usain Bolt, can you physically actually cut off a guy moving that much, Ray?
I agree, Steve, that he didn't fight. Like I said, that's why I said it was one guy did nothing, another guy did less. But here's the reason why. If you go by the stats, which I think when HBO has the stats, you know, which is all bullshit anyway, you know, if you go by who hit the other man more, and that's all you can go by. In boxing, the other job is to hit the other guy more than he hits you. That's the bottom line. Lara did. If you go by the percentages, power punches, which I didn't know he had any power, Lara did. So if you go by the percentage of all that, Lara had the higher percentage. All those things in place, he beat the guy. Now, I don't put a lot of relevance into it, except in that particular fight, Canelo was throwing body shots. Yeah, and the guy was catching him off his elbows and turning, you know, he's moving. He was controlling the pace of the fight. He was controlling the ring. That's why I said ring generalship. To me, he won the fight.
Ray, I'm absolutely stunned that you, as a former professional prize fighter, puts any credence into punch stats. And for the record, yeah, well, okay. So, what you referenced them, everyone keeps bringing up the fact that Canelo only landed 97 punches. That's an anemic rate under any standard. However, Lara only landed 10 more, which means by average he landed less than 1 per round. I also think one guy had much more power. I've always said this about Lara. He's given credit for being a bigger version of Guillermo Rigondeaux because they're both dark-skinned Cuban southpaws. Right. You know what though, Ray? I think Lara is not as good as Rigondeaux, and he's never moved that much. I think those body shots, many of them were blocked. There's a reason why he moved more than ever before, Ray, in that particular fight.
But you also got to look, Steve. Believe me, I'm the banger, so I'm hoping the guy Canelo proves me wrong. You're right. The style of Lara, it's a stinking fight. He stunk the joint out. But Canelo got exposed once again. Guys who give movement confuse him, baffle him. He had no idea how to cut the guy off. His corner had no clue what to tell him in the corner. They told him nothing. Same thing when he fought Mayweather. They told him nothing. And he was doing ring around the rosy. That's my point. He was letting Lara dictate. Okay. And look, as a puncher, if he would have hit him a shot that hurt Lara, if this guy was shook him, I said, yeah, he didn't do any of that. He kept going body. They're most being blocked. And then he wasn't even jabbing his way in and hitting with any good right hands. I mean, to me, Canelo did nothing. He was very ordinary.
You say he did nothing. I'm going to say this. I think Lara boxed well in spots, but there is a fine line between boxing and a full-blown retreat. And remember Arthur McCanty, great referee, Hall of Famer. If he was actually the referee of that fight, you know what he would have done? He would have called timeout. He would have called Lara over and said, hey, guy, you want to get into this fight? And we talked about this earlier. Great old matchmaker had a part in your career by the name of Teddy Brenner. If that fight took place at the Madison Square Garden in the 60s or 70s, Teddy Brenner literally would have actually, between the rounds, would have gone up into that corner and said, hey, Lara, you don't start fighting and you don't get paid. So my point is, Ray, as someone who appreciates boxing, but was the type of guy that was a fighter, should we reward these type of tactics from Lara?
Normally I'd say no. Except you got a guy who's walking in front, eating punches. All I would say, move your head a little bit. Try to make him miss a little bit. Just a little bit. He didn't. That's the point. Canelo did nothing to show that he deserved to win that fight. He chased, he ran basically after him. And the punch he was throwing that air. Come on, man. Bang the right hand to the body. Catch him in the left. Stop him with the left hooks. And then, at least you do something. Even if you ain't hurting him and you ain't catching him clean, you're doing something. He didn't do nothing.
Ray, 23 years old. His last 4 fights, Austin Trout, who was undefeated. He had beaten Miguel Cotto. That's a good win, close win.
Yes.
Got blanked by Mayweather. A lot of guys get blanked by Mayweather.
That's right.
Physically dominates a one-dimensional Alfred Angulo.
Right.
Now he ekes past Erislandy Lara in a fight that I think people are split on. How much credit do we give Saul Alvarez for this 4-fight run?
Well, I like Canelo. Trust me, I like him. I think he's good for boxing. I've met him. He's a good guy. But the perfect example you said about these fights. When he fought Trout when he was moving, gave him headaches, gave him problems. But when Trout stopped and tried to bang with him, punch with him a little bit, he got caught. And then he goes in. Of course, he fights Mayweather, which he's still trying to figure it out. It was like the Rubik's cube for him.
Blindfolded too, by the way.
Yes. And then, of course, you get Angulo, who stands right in front of him, who's the human punching bag. God forbid, but the guy is now. So now we give him another guy who moves on him. I tell you the truth, he got the decision. And is it better for boxing? Would we pay to see Lara Cotto? No. Canelo Cotto? Yes. That's the bigger fight. Means nothing, and it means something to boxing. They better make that fight right now. If Canelo fights Cotto, and I think he beats Cotto, then gets right back into the mix. And nobody's talking about the Lara fight.
Ray, what I'm being told by Bob Arum is that Cotto will return mid-December. Canelo might fight November 8th. He believes that fight could be made for next spring. In other words, they're going to marinate. The other question I have about Saul Alvarez, at age 23, has he already reached his ceiling as a fighter?
Normally you would say no, except he turned pro at 15. And I don't care who you are. People don't understand. Your body's like a sponge. You only have so many fights in it, whether you have an extensive amateur career or a short and a long professional, whatever. There's only so many fights. Depends on how much you get used up in amateurs and or pros. Well, Canelo turned pro at 15. He's 23. That's 8 years as a pro. He has over 50-some fights. And people don't understand, it's not the fights, it's the training. Each training camp, 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it is, that's what uses you up. So people keep saying, oh, he's a young guy. But he's been a pro for over 8 years now. And he's getting hit, and he's getting bit by bigger guys. Even at 15, before his body developed, he was getting hit by bigger guys. So I'm going to tell you, to me, he doesn't have a whole lot, a long projection of a career left. He's got probably a couple good years. Go in, cash out, make the biggest fights, and cash out.
So in other words, it's like a car that's only 3 years old but still has 135,000 miles on the odometer.
Right.